Well, welcome back to This Week in High School Sports. I'm Teresa Wippel and Steve Willits. We're back here.
We are back here.
And we're celebrating a wonderful Seahawks victory, aren't we?
We're celebrating a very lucky Seahawks victory, but sometimes it's better to be lucky than good, and that's why they play the game, right? You never know who's going to win, and that's why our athletes play as well.
That's right. So we are going to talk about a lot of things, but before we do that, the most important news is that we have a new sponsor.
That is important indeed, and we appreciate having a sponsor, and we should thank Carrie Krause right off the bat. Before we go any further, and before I do the read for this, Carrie is somebody who is well known throughout the Mountlake Terrace community. Her kids go to school at Mountlake Terrace High School. Through sports and other activities. She's been very active in terms of fundraising for not only school activities, but for other things that go on within the community. And Carrie has graciously stepped up to support us in our endeavor and to make sure that we're able to keep continuing to bring what we do for these kids to light and to make sure that they're getting plenty of exposure via the internet. So on that note, without further ado, whether you need to buy or sell real estate, Carrie Krause is ready to help you. She's local to South Snohomish and North King counties and knows the area very well. Contact Carrie to get more information on the value of your home or maybe a referral for a great mortgage advisor. Call or text 206-795-2712 or email krause.homes@gmail.com. That's krause.homes@gmail.com. Carrie doesn't work 9 to 5. She's here for you on your schedule. When it's time to get to work, Carrie will take as much stress, worry, and work off of your plate as possible to make the home buying or selling process a positive one. You can find past client reviews on Zillow and Yelp. And once again, thank you, Carrie, for stepping up and to help us bring the show to you.
That's right. So now turning to our boys and girls teams. First, let's talk Edmonds-Woodway and Lynnwood. There were some unexpected first quarters last time, weren't there?
They're on both the boys and the girls side. Certainly, when these two teams get together, as far as this year's concerned, you think you know what you're going to get. We have a Lynnwood girls team that's ranked second in the state right now, coming off of a state championship. We have an Edmonds-Woodway boys team who's putting up astronomical numbers this year, and they're going against a Lynnwood team that's been struggling. So on Friday night, the two teams were playing each other, or the two boys and girls were playing simultaneously at different gyms. And Twitter started buzzing pretty quickly at around 7:30 because the unexpected was happening. End of the first quarter on the boys' side of things, Lynnwood was leading Edmonds-Woodway 27-12, and David Woodard, the star player for Edmonds-Woodway, had 3 fouls. Yeah. We were thinking maybe an upset at that point. And then on the girls' side, and we'll get to this one in a little bit, but just to tease you for now, the Lynnwood girls fell behind Edmonds-Woodway 10-0, and this was all happening at the same time. So we had a lot to watch as we were, for us anyway, we were broadcasting the Mountlake Terrace Shorecrest game, and we were certainly trying to figure out what was going on throughout the night while we were doing that because we didn't think either one of those things was going to happen. Now getting back to the boys' game, Edmonds-Woodway did finally get it turned around. Still trailed at halftime. However, they were able to catch up, and they did get a victory. It was 83-77 over Lynnwood. In that game, David Woodard did finish with 27 points. Brady Edwards had 18. For the Royals, Bryce Milne, who's having a nice season, had 24 points. Tanner Mack, 14. So a great game between those two teams. We always like to see a great game and great moments between two of our own schools, and we got one on Friday night. So congratulations to both teams. And Lynnwood, again, they might be in last place right now, but they're exciting, and they are not an easy victory for anybody right now.
They don't give up.
They don't give up at all. They were in it until the very end, and we're seeing more of that from Lynnwood as the season progresses. Early on in the season, weren't as competitive in some of their games. They're turning it around, and that goes back to Bobby Hinnenkamp, the coach, and the job that he's doing over there. Edmonds-Woodway also had a 88-65 victory over Arlington earlier in the week. So Edmonds-Woodway now with only 2 losses through 12 games, and they're looking good.
Yeah, and now Mountlake Terrace boys, they had 2 close calls as well, didn't they?
They had 2 very close calls, both of which we broadcasted on the Sound Live Sports Network. Tuesday night they played up at Glacier Peak, trailed 16-15 at halftime. So a little bit of a defensive battle there, and 2 teams that are known for playing tough defense. Hawks pull out a 3-point victory at the end, but that game came right down to the wire. And then on Friday night, Mountlake Terrace returned home and played Shorecrest. It was the game we mentioned earlier. A game that was for first place, as both teams came into the night with identical 3-0 division records. Mountlake Terrace falls behind by 10 points in the second quarter. They escape with a victory, and Shorecrest, a team that is, height-wise, the tallest team in the league, and the shortest of players, Joey Gardner at 5'8" for Mountlake Terrace. He's the star of the second half. He scores 12 of his 14 points. Very instrumental in that comeback. Gabe Altenberger, by the way, 22 points in that game. And just a great win for Mountlake Terrace all around, as they now have sole possession of first place. But again, one game back, Shorecrest and Edmonds-Woodway. So stay tuned for that battle as it's going to continue.
Great. And that gives me a great segue for the shortest player, because I happen to be at the Edmonds-Woodway and Arlington game, and for the girls' side. And Serafina Balderas, who is 5 feet at the most, had an amazing game. She was hot. She was making her threes. It was incredible. And she was actually named the Sound Live Sports Network Player of the Game. So that was a wonderful game to watch. Unfortunately, the Warriors did come out on the losing end of that. But we saw a couple of games like that where they started out strong. The Warriors did, and then ended up kind of losing the edge. You can talk a little bit more about the Lynnwood game, too.
Yeah, Edmonds-Woodway, so they did play the 2 games last week, and the Associated Press finally came out with their first coaches poll of the year. So Edmonds-Woodway played Arlington on Wednesday night. Arlington's ranked 3rd in the state. They played Lynnwood on Friday night. Lynnwood's ranked 2nd in the state. So a tough week to a tough draw for your schedule. And you're right, Edmonds-Woodway did jump out to leads in both of those games. They were up 6-0 on Arlington before Arlington came back. And you mentioned it, Serafina Balderas, a great player, having a fantastic season. And they're just a well-rounded team anyway. That's a team that played in the state championship game at the 4A level just 3 years ago, them being Arlington, and a team that was at the state tournament last year. So we knew it was going to be a tough game going in. Edmonds-Woodway gave it a nice run, but they came up a little bit short. And then on Friday night, as we mentioned earlier, they did jump out to that 10-0 lead on Lynnwood. Lynnwood came storming back with 11 straight points. Lynnwood is always tough, and once they caught the lead, they didn't look back. They ended up pulling away 56-29. So Lynnwood remains undefeated on the year. Edmonds-Woodway, their record falls to 8 wins and 4 losses, which not too shabby, especially when you take into account that 2 of those losses came against teams that are ranked in the top 3. And by the way, Michaela Pivic, 19 points. Kelsey Rogers, 14 in that Lynnwood victory over Edmonds-Woodway.
And the Meadowdale girls, they had a close call, too.
They had a very close call. They played a Shorecrest team that on paper, based on other results this year, you would have thought would have been a substantial favorite over them. And Meadowdale jumped out to a 15-4 lead at the end of the first quarter, and they made it a close game all the way through. Shorecrest finally gets the victory, 51-48 at the end, but give Meadowdale a lot of credit. We've talked about them before being a young team, and with players like Selena Teckel, who had 13 points, and Adriana Valadez, who had 8 points, they were able to hang out in that game for a while, and now Meadowdale and Mountlake Terrace get to play each other this week in a game that for 2 young teams that are struggling to get wins. We know one of them will get a win that night, and again, that should be a fun game for both of those 2 teams, fairly evenly matched.
Yep, yeah. And now we can shift to wrestling, right? It's about time for that.
We have a lot to talk about for wrestling this week. It was a very busy week if you're an Edmonds-Woodway Warrior wrestler in particular. They spent last weekend down in the Vancouver area. They were at Mountain View High School. 31 teams taking place in the Pacific Coast Championship tournament. Edmonds-Woodway finished 10th out of 31 schools. Spencer Schultz winning his weight class in the 195-pound division. Not a big surprise. I think we've seen Spencer Schultz win his weight class a few times this year. Then on Tuesday, all 4 of the schools in the district got together over at Lynnwood High School. They wrestled in a dual meet. Edmonds-Woodway picking up victories over both Lynnwood and Mountlake Terrace. And the thing about this one was that Edmonds-Woodway got all of their wrestlers involved that night. Only 2 wrestlers wrestled in both of those meets, so they were able to show that they have depth also in getting those victories. Cole Hadoller and Konstantin Stradoff were the only 2 wrestlers for the Warriors to get multiple victories, and that's a testament to what their that program is and how deep it is. I should also mention that on the same night, Mountlake Terrace did pick up a victory over Meadowdale. Meadowdale then defeated Lynnwood, so 3 of our schools getting a victory that night, which was nice. And then Edmonds-Woodway goes down to California just this past weekend, and they wrestle in the Sam Dijon tournament, which is in San Bernardino, California. and they finished in second place out of 28 schools. And I want to make sure we're getting some of these names out here because this is impressive. For, again, 28 different schools at this meet. Sadat Kanye, Riley Seward, and Mason McDaniel, all three picking up first place finishes in their weight class. Spencer Schultz, Abrima Fadi, and Mitchell Martinez all took second place in their respected classes. Michael Swires finished in third. Abduli Jada and Konstantin Stradev finished in fifth. So if you're keeping track, that's 9 different wrestlers finishing in the top 5 out of 28 schools. Very impressive showing by the Warriors. And we've mentioned it before, when the Matt Classic comes up in the Tacoma Dome in February, I think we're going to see a few Warrior wrestlers down there.
I think we will have quite a few.
And one more note for wrestling. This Tuesday, the Japanese Cultural Exchange Team is going to be at Edmonds-Woodway High School wrestling against a Wesco All-Star team. So that should be kind of fun. A lot of Japan's finest wrestlers coming over to the States and wrestling in our own backyard. So we certainly hope that folks can get out there on Tuesday night and watch some of their best wrestlers.
That's great. And a little bit of swimming action, I understand.
We
too.
do. We didn't have a lot last week, but we do have some upcoming. On Thursday, actually I should say on Tuesday, Meadowdale and Lynnwood will be swimming against Jackson over at Lynnwood Pool. And on that same day over at the Shoreline Pool, Mountlake Terrace and Edmonds-Woodway will be going up against Shorecrest. Should also mention on Thursday, Lynnwood and Meadowdale will be at Kamiak. And then on Saturday morning over at Marysville-Pilchuck, you'll have a diver qualifier. So a lot of the top divers in Wesco will be over at Marysville-Pilchuck that morning.
Okay. Well, and if you want to check out some of the live broadcasts, we actually have 5 of them this week between us and our STSPN.com partner. On tomorrow night, you'll be at Mountlake Terrace, right, for the Meadowdale boys
Mountlake
game?
Terrace, Meadowdale team that's over 500 and barely lost to Shorewood the other night. So a very improved team. That could be a very good game.
Yep, and then Lynnwood girls travel to Glacier Peak on Wednesday, which we're expecting should be a good matchup. You never know, Lynnwood is really strong, but Glacier Peak has always fielded a good team.
Glacier Peak is ranked number 10 in the AP poll right now in the state, and they've only got 2 losses this year.
Okay, so that should be a good one. And then, and did I go backwards? Because it looks like we've got a Wednesday night game. No, that's the Wednesday night game. Sorry. Thursday night game. It's hard to keep track of all these. Edmonds-Woodway boys at Glacier Peak. That's right. That was the other Glacier Peak game. And then Friday we have 2 games, Glacier Peak girls at Edmonds-Woodway and
Which could be a phenomenal game.
That could be a very
good matchup.
Very good matchup, yeah. And then Shorecrest girls at Lynnwood. So all good games. Check them out or come and see them in person. They always love to have fans there.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, that'll do it for us this week. Steve, thanks again for stopping by. And thanks to our sponsor, Carrie Krause, for coming on board and sponsoring the show. We appreciate that. And we will see you next time.